We are in a great season of change, of immense change, and we have a reminder of that in the news cycle today, starting off with the Supreme Court. It is Tuesday morning, and here are just a few things to think about for today that'll hopefully make you a little bit smarter. We are in the season for Supreme Court decisions. This happens every year in the final weeks of June, where we get the results, the rulings from the Supreme Court on any myriad number of cases that we've seen argued over the last several months. We're expecting some really big decisions on topics like President Trump's taxes and even abortion. But just yesterday, we got a really interesting decision on discrimination in the workplace. So here's a little bit of the background. There is a federal law that prevents discrimination in the workplace based on religion, race, and sex. There was a question about whether or not the term sex included your sexual orientation or your gender identity. And the reason why this matters is that half of US states right now do not have specific laws on discrimination in the workplace on this particular topic. So if you were like me and you saw some of the headlines yesterday saying the Supreme Court is ruling that you cannot discriminate based on gender identity or sexual orientation, you might think, wait a minute, I've already done that? But no, the answer is not explicitly in the way that the law at times is being applied. So the decision yesterday, the Supreme Court ruled that existing federal law includes protection, anti-discrimination protection in the workplace for those depending on their sexual orientation or gender identity. Now, what would be the argument against that? It might be a question that you had. I certainly had. I was just sort of curious about it. Again, I thought this was established law. I didn't know that it wasn't necessarily that way. So there is a debate in constitutional law whether or not the Supreme Court should essentially update existing federal law to include the current modern value system. So in this particular law, it included sex. Sex was related to gender, not necessarily sexual orientation. So there's a question about whether or not the Supreme Court should make that call, or our representatives should pass specific federal law that would be very explicit on who the law is talking about. And that's where the debate is. Those that did not appreciate the decision by the Supreme Court said that the Supreme Court was legislating instead of ruling. So kind of an interesting thing just to know about the Supreme Court and understand that that debate is happening with existing law at times. So that's what was going on yesterday with the Supreme Court. Second thing you should know today, the president is going to be issuing an executive order. This is in the aftermath of the death of George Floyd, and now Rayshard Brooks. And the president is going to be meeting with families, Black families that have had family members who have been victims of police killings. The president is also going to be meeting with law enforcement. The executive order is still not specific. It's the morning right now, around 9:20 Central Time. We're expecting the details this afternoon. I'll update you as soon as we do, but we expect the executive order issued by the president to include some sort of national database that would keep track of police misconduct, questions about whether or not that would include allegations of misconduct. So that's something that he's looking at working on, as well as incentives for police departments to continue training. Now, there is a question about whether or not the president can withhold federal funding to certain police departments if they do not meet certain standards or accreditations. We'll wait and watch for that. Congress is responsible for allocating your taxpayer dollar. So whether or not the president can do that is a question. So we're just waiting for more information on that. You may already know that legislation is being proposed by Democrats and Republicans in the House and the Senate. So the president is stepping forward, making this executive action part of the executive branch, and we'll continue to watch legislation as well. So it's important to watch both sides of the story. Finally, I'm really excited about this. I've been totally geeking out about this for the last 24 hours. This is brand new data from the CDC on COVID-19. We finally have information from the CDC spanning the end of January, the very first case of COVID-19 in America, to the end of May. So it's a big chunk of data. We went from one case in America to 1.7 million cases in the matter of about 4 months. And this is the data that we got in this. So here are the big takeaways. Something important to note, yes, there were 1.7 million cases. We do not have data on all those cases. We have data at 1.3 million. And then depending on the category, we have even less than that. So just keep that in mind. more data, incomplete data. But here's the big takeaways. The big thing you should know about COVID-19 based on the last 4 months is that pre-existing conditions really matter. We heard that, but now we're getting the facts associated with it so far. If you have pre-existing conditions, your chances of being hospitalized due to COVID-19 are 6 times higher than others without pre-existing conditions, and fatalities rise to 12 times as high. So pre-existing conditions really matter. We're talking about heart disease, diabetes, lung conditions. There'd be a question about obesity as well. So pre-existing conditions, big headline for me in this. The second thing is the age factor, the median age. Remember, we were told at the beginning, if you're younger than 65, you may not have to worry that much about COVID-19, way back at the beginning. Now we're again getting a reminder that's not the case. The median age for COVID-19 in America is 48. And get this, you have a higher incident of COVID-19 if you're between the ages of 40 and 60 than you do if you're between 60 and 80. The highest group overall by far is in the over 80 category. And it doesn't say it in this report, but I would believe this is a reflection of the nursing home deaths that we've seen and heard about, these devastations in nursing homes, especially in the East Coast. So we're seeing that in the data. But it is very interesting, between 40 and 60, you have a higher incident, and especially between 50 and 60 than you do if you're between 60 and 80. Final thing, we are seeing a disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on minority communities, Hispanic and Black Americans. The CDC says they cannot quite figure out the reason for that yet. And again, when it comes to the data, where we are assigning an ethnicity to patients as we're recording their data, the data is incomplete. So that's still important to know. By the way, I know we've talked a lot about COVID-19 in children and some of these kind of rare effects in children. We're continuing to see very low rates of COVID-19 in the 9 and younger. And I'm going to revisit that question about the raising of concerns of that inflammatory syndrome that we talked about a couple weeks ago. We didn't get anything about that in this report, so that's what you should know. Final little kicker for you guys, the Academy Awards has been delayed about 2 months to the end of April due to the coronavirus. But I do have a question for you. As we cover Academy Awards over the last several years, we've seen lower ratings. We have seen a lot of debate about race in the Academy Awards. Do you remember the hashtag #OscarsSoWhite? Remember that? And now we have the coronavirus. And so when we're looking at the Academy Awards, which haven't been delayed really until in the past, only as recently as President Reagan's assassination was the last time that they were, assassination attempt, the last time that they were delayed. Whether it's the Academy Awards, Major League Baseball, football, all of these big public events that we've really kind of marked the year with, do you think it's going to be business as normal as we continue throughout the rest of 2020 and going into 2021. I'm curious what you think about that. Is the delay for the Academy Awards going to change it really forever? A change that's already been happening. So let me know what you think about that. And I look forward to hearing from you guys. Thanks for all the feedback. Direct message us at Smarter News or hello@smarternews.com. Love hearing from you guys. Have a great Tuesday, and I'll see you tomorrow.